Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the True Potential Do More With Your Money podcast. It is episode number 75 today on Friday, the 2nd of July. Today, as you can tell, ladies and gentlemen, we're back doing this remotely. Something I never thought we'd have to do again, but just so you know, we took the decision just to close the office for a week just because of local spikes around the northeast area. So we just decided to box clever and work from home this particular week. So you have the pleasure of looking all of our faces on the grid today as opposed to across the room. And joining me on the grid is Jeff Casson, Diane Patterson and Jamie Sexton. So good morning, guys, and thank you very much for joining me today on the grid. And we're going to talk about saving versus spending. I think we've talked this subject before, we've talked about other topics, but based on the questions and answers which came in last week, we thought it would be worth spending a bit more time on this particular topic. So we'll get into some kind of ideas and some logic testing in just a few moments. But in time-honoured tradition, good morning, Jeff. Maybe we could hand across to you and you could kick things off for us with the economy update.
Yeah, I'll give a brief update just on what we've seen over markets, but I'll probably also just comment a little bit on the first half of the year, given that's where we've got to at this point in time, and really looking back at the month of June, another good performance for asset markets across the piece, and another good performance delivered by the True Potential Portfolio Solutions through that period as well. So that all comes together with a number of factors really in the background that have been supportive that we've discussed on these podcasts, but also discussed in the morning markets where people can get a lot more detail on the themes that we're seeing on a daily basis. But just thinking about the month in itself, with global equities delivering another good performance, up about 4% on the month. With that coming through primarily this time and a bit different to what we discussed over the past couple of weeks, really driven by the US and a reversal of that trade towards value, much more about growth this month, with the US being the market that was the strongest, and within that the NASDAQ. The UK continues to do well from an economic standpoint, but it's just interesting to observe that the equity market itself isn't as participating as well in that strength, and one of the reasons for that is the real export-oriented nature of the UK main market itself. So that's been a bit of a drag there. So we look at the main market, the UK, it's only up about 40 bips over the course of the month, so really about international being the key driver there. I think just the other thing to touch on over the course of the month has been a bit of a change in the narrative from some global central banks, particularly the US Fed, pulling forward their expectation of interest rate increases. So that's been something that has changed certainly over the course of this month, introduced a bit of volatility in the middle of the month, and then that seems to have dropped away. One reason for that at this point is just going into the 4th of July holiday in the US. So we've seen it's a bit quieter. It feels more like a holiday market, if that's the way to describe it, this past week, particularly in the US, and you can see that in volumes. And then just maybe to highlight some of those key things that have been really supportive for asset markets and the returns that have been generated in the True Potential Portfolio Solution over the course of the first half. It's really about that reopening of economies, the strength in economic growth coming through. We look at global GDP numbers. We're thinking you could be something in the region of 4 to 6% this year. The US is likely to grow 6% this year, a number that is pretty unheard of over the past 20-25 years. And then the fiscal support that's there, the rollout of vaccines, as we all know. We're all pretty close to getting double jabbed in terms in the UK. That's been really supportive for getting economies reopened, and that has certainly supported spending, which we'll probably come on and discuss as we go through this. But it's also supported a degree of savings as well as we've navigated our way through lockdown. So we've got both sides of that to discuss as we go through today. So a good performance from asset markets over the month. Positive returns for all of the True Potential portfolios over the month as well.
Grand. Thank you very much, Jeff. And you mentioned with the US markets, it feels like holiday season because it's July the 4th coming up, isn't it? And having been in New York before on business around this type of time, it really is quiet season over there. So it's no surprise. Will the US markets be closed today, Jeff, or will it be closed on Friday because of 4th of July?
They'll be closed on Monday. This Monday, right. They'll close.
Okay. And you mentioned at the end there, Jeff, as well about the comment about the saving and spending side of things, which is obviously today's topic. But just to kind of put a pin in your update there as well, I watched your More Markets video yesterday where you did the Q1 or the Q2 end of term report, so to speak, as well. So if anybody wants more info from Jeff and the IM team, if you go to our YouTube channel, I picked yesterday's More Markets video. There's more detail there. But back to saving versus spending. We spoke about this 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, I think, when we were talking about, say, the FIRE movement, this concept of financial independence, retire early, and that's kind of saving on steroids, so to speak. But let's look at saving versus spending for the normal person, the person who just wants to live a bit of a normal lifestyle as well, which is all about not living like a hermit, so to speak, or a monk, as I described in my podcast, but actually being aware of the fact that you need to save and being aware of how much you need to save as well. So maybe let's think about how much you need to save to start with, and we'll fire that across to you, please, Jamie. Where's the best place for people to figure out how much they need to be saving and why?
I think it's we talk about goal setting again, Dan, and it's something we've done quite a lot over these podcasts in terms of setting an objective, but it's really just pitching of what the reason is to save first. So if you're saving for an event that happens in 15, 10, an example of me is I've got a son that I want to send to school when he's 10-year-old, year 7, and I know I probably need about 100 grand in private school fees if that's what I want to do. So there's a 10-year objective. That's how much I need to save, and that's my objective. I think everyone will have, not everyone will have that sort of goal, but typically you'll have someone that wants to retire. That's an objective. And when I talk to clients about retirement, I look at, let's have a look at your current expenditure. Let's take off what we wouldn't expect. So in retirement, so things such as your mortgage being paid off, your petrol might increase slightly or it might decrease depending on your travel backwards and forwards to work. You'll find you might want to do more holidays. So you kind of go through a detail with a client, and once upon a time you say, he's for an expenditure, but it's worth time to identify. And then you can actually go on our sites and put that in a calculator to say, if I need £20,000 a year, how much will I need to achieve that? And the tool will tell you exactly the lump sum that you need at the end. Sometimes that can be very daunting, but if you're saving for 30 or 40 years or even 20 years, it's, actually the monthly amounts don't specifically, they're not always as high. But what I would say is you might not be able to afford that amount, but actually starting somewhere will help. Things always to think about, though, is that when you're looking at your end goal on that retirement, so that end amount of money, remember that you've typically got 2 state pensions for husband and wife, which comes in about £18,000. So you're kind of looking for that amount above that, which will cover, as well as other guarantee incomes that you may have had from final salary pension schemes or etc. But I always say when it's worth sort of taking a step back, see what your objective is first. So what are you actually saving for? And then when you decide what you're saving for, then you start to look at a bit more detail of actually how much you need.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, Jamie. I think it's wonderful when people say I want to save some money, but I get a few of my friends ask me this. I need to save, and I always do exactly what you said there, which is, why are you saving? I think if you can try to quantify what you're trying to do and by when, it helps you anchor it. It also, once you're anchored and once you've got something to aim at, it makes it a lot harder to kind of drift away from it as well. I think if you just got this abstract notion, which is I need to save some money, it can be very easy to kind of switch it off one month to save less, and another month to save a bit more, the month after, and you drift, versus quantifying it and really laser focusing in on it. And you mentioned the technology, Jamie, and how you can check it. And Diane, with the True Potential sites, you can track the status of that goal versus performance.
Yeah, absolutely. So on this sites, much like you say, Dan, if you don't have a goal, it's very easy just to dip in and think, oh, I'll just take 10 here, 50 there, £100 because I'm just saving. It's a rainy day fund. I know I've got something there to use. But if you do plot it towards a goal, absolutely, the client websites will allow you, much like Jamie says, and certainly with the advice side of things, you're going to have a different level of questions, I suppose, rather than, yes, I want to save. It will ask you how much you want to save, what your expenditure is, and it will plot a graph for you that says this is your starting point. If you're starting today with just, let's say, £100, it'll take that £100, it will look at how it's going to be invested, and it will give you a projection as well as a goal. So you can see whether you've got a shortfall, you can see whether you're on target, and some months you will be, some months you will see that you're naturally big, given market growth, you'll naturally be online to achieve your goal, and other days you'll come in and you'll look and you'll be like, yeah, nowhere near that goal today. But that's where impulse save comes in. So if you do have spare cash, then you can just decide to save it in the way that you would have spent it by assigning a debit card to your account and taking that payment in impulse save.
I suppose it's like a lot of things where you setting a goal is important. It's sort of that psychology thing. It gives you something to aim at. I suppose in the same way as if you're training for an event, or you're wanting to set a goal of losing weight or achieving a particular time in an event. If you've got that goal set, you're much more motivated to try and achieve it. Whereas if you're just going along, and I know myself, if I'm going out on the bike, I'll potter along. But if I'm trying to train for an event, it'll give you that added goal and impetus to move there. So as Diana said, having it front and center of your mind with the technology focuses you on achieving that. And I think just psychologically that works really well. Setting that goal, being very laser focused on it, just because the way we are as people, we've got a want to drop away from them.
Yeah,
I think in terms of what Jamie said, so I don't have children. Thankfully, I'm not planning to spend any amount of money on sending anybody to university or school anywhere, just me. So my long-term goal is retirement, and it is daunting because you do look and what's the point of saving for 10, 20, 30, 40 years time when you don't necessarily know what position you're going to be in. So you do have to weigh up your options, and the sites do give you the ability to do that. So if you've got a regular contribution or a direct debit, if you don't want to, right now, say you've got 30 years to retirement, if you don't want to part with a big amount of your income, you do need a life outside of that, then the client sites will allow you to determine how much that you do want to spend, to have a look at a goal, but also contribute incrementally. And I can't remember what somebody once said to me was, people assume that in retirement you're going to spend less, but you have to. That's not how it is at all, because every day is a weekend. And as soon as that became real, that was my reality. I don't want to spend Monday to Friday sat in the house because I can't afford to go out because I didn't save enough for retirement. And it's just weird when you think about it like that you're saving for your future, but it's your future. You want to be able to enjoy it. You have to have money there. And I would disagree with Jamie about the state pension, because I don't think the state pension is going to be around forever. And even now I'm worried that in my 20 years to retirement, that it might not be there for me to fall back on. So now I'm having to look at the government, the debt that comes associated with COVID now, where that's going to be coming from, and the stories around what the government are likely going to be start looking at in terms of pensions and taxes. And that's really given me the kick up the bottom that I needed to save more in my pension, because I can't rely on the government anymore.
Yeah, I think it's a control point of view there, Diane. I'm of the same mindset as a state pensioner. You're at the mercy of governments, of chancellors, of treasury, and everything else going on within there. So I don't even count my state pension. If I end up retiring and I get one, fantastic. But from a control point of view, I'd rather own my own destiny. I'd rather have my own pension, and I'd rather track that goal. And then if I get the state pension, it's an icing on the cake. And it was a very wise man, Diane, who told you about retirement being like a week of weekends. It was me. It was me who said it on the phone. Give the credit there. Jeff, I think Diane's been talking to about pension goals being 20, 30 years off, but obviously we've also got shorter term goals. Let's say you want to do something in 5 years' time. It could be paying off a chunk of your mortgage or something. Should there be a different investment strategy which you would look at, say, for a longer term, be it 20, 25, 30 years versus a shorter 5 to 10 year time scale?
I think like everything in that regard, it comes back to individuals' personal circumstance. And clearly, if somebody's wanting to achieve that goal earlier, they can be probably what one could describe slightly more aggressive in their savings goals. Now, I suppose you have two ways of achieving that. One, we could think about saving more into a solution, or saving into a solution that may offer you that opportunity to get to a higher goal in a quicker way. So how could that be achieved? Might be taking, rather than being in a balanced portfolio, you might want to be an aggressive portfolio to achieve that, and that will come with the opportunity to earn a higher return. It also comes associated with that slightly higher level of risk. And I think that's the one thing that has to be balanced off for any individual thinking about the difference between that short-term goal versus the longer-term goal. Striking that balance right. If you're not sure yourself, get some advice. Go and speak to someone that can help. Go onto the site, use the technology to determine the pluses and minuses of being slightly more aggressive versus being in balance, for example, to achieve that goal. I think it also, we need to think about what it is, that long-term goal, the pension. We should be more exposed to equities over the longer term to achieve that. And I think to Diane's point as well, we often think about, and people suggest that you should de-risk more as you're getting into that retirement phase. But then life expectancy has changed so much that somebody at 55 today probably has the potential to live to 85 or longer, and that's not much different than somebody at 25 starting out on their savings goals as well. So there is that real balance to be struck to how you ensure that you are going to provide yourself with sufficient capital to achieve those longer term goals, but as you say as well, Dan, how you achieve those short term aims as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and I think it's a really tricky balance, because obviously we all have money as well. I have my pension, I have an ISA, a GIA with True Potential, and I'm always trying to figure out. You're trying half of it not to be too greedy and just push for all of the growth and aggressive, but also as part of it becomes superstitious as well, which is, well, I don't want to lose too much too, and I think that's where probably the diversification comes in, not just in terms of picking, say, a balanced portfolio and it being diversified, but if you've got more than one account, I think it's maybe diversifying your risk appetite across those different accounts as well. And something, Jamie, if clients, sometimes we see this, I think it was last week we were talking on the Q&A about almost taking some element of risk, say like an 80-20 type of portfolio where you have 80% aggressive and 20% defensive. Now, you can't by default do that with True Potential, but you can get that set up if you speak to us. How would a client do that, Jamie?
Yeah, we can split the product. So if they feel like they want to split their assets for the reasons that you say, you would effectively have two ISAs, or not two ISAs, you would have two pensions, and so on the website is two different products. Just quickly picking up on something Jeff said there, Dan, I think it's actually quite important, is that pre-pension freedom, so which isn't that long ago, you'd always see, I think, Jeff, you on about someone retiring, someone being 55 and living to 84. A pension used to be seen as, well, when I retire, it needs to be in cash. I'm going to take 25% and I'm going to buy an annuity. And now that's very different. And I was reading a press article the other day about this, where the majority of clients now actually stay invested and use drawdown as an option, where you keep your money in your pension and you phase that over a period. So when you're considering that longer term risk, it is right to think, actually, you don't have to take 25% out of your pension at 65-year-old. You don't have to buy an annuity. It may be a good option for you as a client based on your risk, but it may not be. So when you're considering picking your risk or looking at your risk at 55 and thinking, actually, and saying that I might want to slightly reduce some of it, then just think about, actually, what is my retirement options? Or am I potentially wanting to buy an annuity, which currently annuity rates, it's very rare that I would recommend that product. So I think it's worth considering.
I think you're absolutely right, Jamie. And I know it's almost been done to death on these podcasts over the last few weeks as inflation. So I'll not do it too much. But if you consider you take 25% out of your pension and it just sits then in cash in a bank account, you're actually losing money then, which is actually a different way of looking at it. That's high risk. You wouldn't be saying, well, do you actually want to lose money as it comes on, versus what you're talking about there, Jamie, which is, yeah, you maybe take the 25%, but put that into an ISA, put it into a GIA, or don't even take the full 25% out of your pension. Maybe split your investment policy in there, put maybe 25% into a lower risk side of things, and take your income from there.
And even the other side of that is to think about how you can use some of the income funds that are there as well, and take the natural income that comes off those as a means to supplement what's required. So going back to that point of diversification, thinking about how you can structure it, there's various different ways that can be employed to allow you to get the optimal outcome for each individual. But I suppose there it's what's right for the individual, and it's back to that point that Jamie's making around the need to get advice. Use everything that's there and available. Sorry, Di.
Sorry, no, I also think it comes back to confidence. And I think, Jeff, I think you and I spoke about this last week in podcast 74, in terms of, if you're an investor where previously an advisor's coming to you and he's taken your contributions and he's invested your contributions on behalf of you with a provider that you might get a statement from annually, you don't really know what's been happening from day 1 to day 365 with your cash. You just know that you had X and you now have Y, which might be more some years and slightly less others. And for a period of 10 or 20 years, however long that's been happening, you've had to put your trust in that advisor that they've been doing the right thing for you. Whereas with True Potential and the technology, you can actually see how your money's working for you. You don't have to entrust that to somebody else. You can log in, you can see it, you can understand it, and you can make changes or request changes if and when they're necessary. And that comes to making a withdrawal should you need it for whatever reason that might be. You can do it all via the websites. Now, if you are in control of your money and you understand it and you've seen it for, again, 10, 20 years, by the time you come to retirement, you're probably not going to be feeling like, actually, I should get 25% out and leave it in cash, because you understand what's been happening with your money over that period of time. It for me, it does come down to education as well. And what do you understand? What is it that you want? Why do you want it? And how do you think that you'll achieve that? And you can do that now yourself within the websites.
Yeah. And just to give a plug to morning markets within that as well, I suppose if people are wanting to understand what's happening in the market environment, why is there getting and why are you seeing that movement in your account, there's the information is there and available on the site from the team at True Potential to get a view and to aid that understanding, to aid that education about what is moving asset prices.
You're turning into a marketeer, Jeff. I was listening to the last week, and you did a similar plug then as well. You've been hanging around the market and
too long trying to get plugs in.
Yes. A slight pivot, but it's still about savings. We obviously talked about the state pension, but you've got a different scheme out there. The workplace pension scheme, auto-enrolment side of things, where we've got about 100,000 members paying into True Potential auto-enrolment schemes every single month. We've talked about this in the past as well, as far as we have a bit of a fear that people maybe are just kind of on autopilot now with their workplace scheme. They think they're going to be looked after because it's getting paid in there. Jamie, maybe you could just talk about, by default, if you're in a workplace scheme, how much that pays in to your pension.
Yeah, you typically it's a mix from employer and employee contribution, but it's a combined 8% contribution that goes in. And when we look at it from a retirement perspective, when I talk to clients, you more likely need double that to hit the objective. So it's a start, and it's I think auto-enrolment's got people thinking about saving. Not even thinking, it's automatically happening, as you say. The next step is to think, actually, how do we start to push people's contributions up to get what they require? And I think, just to kind of mix my view is on auto-enrolment is that this is designed to potentially at some point replace state pensions.
Yeah.
I think that's why the government have put it in, in making employers responsible for that. But it's been incredibly successful as across the country, incredibly successful.
No, it's got people saving. It's got hundreds of thousands of people saving into a pension or a private pension who wouldn't be. So it's a great thing. But out of that 8%, Jamie, that goes in at the moment, how much does the employer pay versus how much does the employee pay out of their pay?
The employer pays 3%, and then you have 5% combined from the employee, which it comes from tax relief and the employee. Yeah,
because they pay about 3% in, and then you get something called pension relief as well, which kind of tops that up at the 5%.
Yeah,
there or thereabouts. So really, I think you're saying as a bit of a rule of thumb, 8% is a great start, but it's going to maybe land you 8% shy if we're talking about needing 15-16% of your money set away, which can seem quite daunting. If we just again use the basic maths there, you're probably going to need a client to save about another 8% of their income into there, maybe a little bit less because of extra pension relief adding on there, which brings us back to the spending versus saving side of things. So do we think saving 5, 6, 7, 8% extra a month seems reasonable, Diane and gentlemen?
I think it depends on your age, Dan, and I think it depends on your lifestyle. Also, your salary comes into it, depending on what kind of salary and things that you're on. But I think it's a shame that auto-enrolments had to be imposed because people weren't saving. I think you need that for your security, but I don't think it's unachievable. I think, like you said, it's daunting to think about if you're 18, 19, 20, 21 and you're saving for a pension where the pension age right now is 67, 68. That's not realistic. You are not thinking about what you're going to be doing with your money at that age in 40, 50 years time. So I would say, personally, I think save a little bit when you're of those ages, put a small contribution towards a pension. And as you mature and your lifestyle matures with you, then it becomes absolutely, I would say, relatively easy to up that contribution because you're already used to saving. So if you gradually increase the contribution towards your pension or whatever your saving goal might be, it just becomes, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like second nature. You don't think about it anymore. You just know that that's what you're doing and that's what your goal is. But yeah, lifestyle.
There's also that point around thinking, Diane mentioned it earlier, just about education and the sort of the understanding of the benefit from saving that can come through, but also the power of compounding and understanding that from an early age becomes really important. And we probably, taking a step back, we probably don't teach the concept of saving. We teach compounding in maths, but actually it's not really brought to life there. If you think about that as the real thing, putting together a little bit, starting earlier, maybe not a saving that's that 8% that we're talking about, but if you're talking about maybe an additional 5 earlier, that power of compounding in and of itself can potentially be, well, it is very helpful in allowing people to achieve that goal. And that's maybe one of the aspects of auto-enrolment and maybe pensions in general, where there's that need for education as to what you're seeking to do and how it can be done. And clearly we help with that, but there's other work to be done by others in that regard as well.
I completely agree, Jeff. I think thinking back to my old times doing GCSE maths and trigonometry and everything else, which I've never used since because I've never wanted to become an architect, or an engineer. Probably if they would, teach some of these things at school and on an education basis, a lot more relevant education, I think it would massively help, because compounding, you're right, Jeff, is so important. It's such a great device, and obviously the larger the amount, you've got the benefit from compounding, the better growth you should see in terms of absolute terms as well, which probably brings us to something which is quite unknown, I think, at times about auto-enrolment schemes, which is typical person in the UK moves jobs every 2-3 years. And a lot of people don't know that you can actually transfer your old scheme into your new scheme as you go along. So, Jamie, how would a client do that?
With us, we are, as soon as someone auto enrolls at our scheme, they can either go on their website, or they can transfer basically just by ringing the team and send the correct forms. If you have a pension with us and you've got workplace pensions and you want to consolidate, as I said, you can ring the team and they can send you the correct forms, or the easiest way is actually to do it on your website. But the team's there to speak to you about it. Yeah. I think it's one of these things. When they first you can tell I'm boring when I read things, but when they first started auto-enrolment, they discussed about, because they identified this could be a problem in terms of people having on average 6 to 12 pots or jobs over their lifetime.
Yeah.
So they were talking about pot follow-on, which is where your pot follows you across but they never kind of got round to it. Do you like that word, Di?
I did. It was good. Pot follow-on.
They already do it in Australia and New Zealand, so it's quite, we just copied off them for enrolment, but they already do that as a service. And I think it would be really helpful to UK consumers if your pot just followed you across your workplace. We've all got we've got good technology that can do that. Not your other pension providers do, but it would just be so helpful to the consumer.
There's no chance of some of the buffoons in our industry being able to do it, Jamie. It's intellectually not possible for them. I had the misfortune of sitting on the pensions dashboard committee 6-7 years ago now, and I attended one meeting and I said, this isn't going anywhere. And I'm delighted to say 6-7 years later, it still hasn't gone anywhere. And that's about the overall view of your pensions, not just auto-enrolment, but bringing your state pension, everything into one sort of dashboard. It's never happened. It will happen eventually, but I think there's a heck of a lot of work needed, and probably a lot of compulsion in terms of regulation before we'll actually get pot follow on. So I think it's for clients, probably just anyone who's listening who thinks, well, I think I did have a pension at my old employer, or I worked at XYZ even 5-10 years ago. Just try and find out, or ask us and we can help you find out as well, because it makes no sense having £5,000 sat over there, £4,000 sat over there. If you consolidate it and put it all in one pot, you'll get that better growth effect from there. But also from a cleanliness point of view, it's a lot neater and tidier if you've just got one workplace scheme. From there, it's easier to monitor, it's easier to look at, and it's easier to check the performance of it as well.
There's a site, Dan, it's worth there's a site where you can go online and you can find my employer, and that basically tells you what pension scheme your employer has.
Right.
So if you maybe it's worth us putting it on the screen for people, but you can, if you have worked at a place, chances are you probably have had a pension, and it'll just be a telephone number, give you an I number, and you'll be able to find out if it's where it is, because it's quite a common thing where people have lost their pensions over the years.
What's that called, Jamie? Find My Employer?
Yeah, Find My Pension. It's a government-backed website. So we can get the link and people can access that. If
this was a trendy podcast, we'll be able to see the links in the show notes below.
Can I just say, we're talking about when people start saving. By the time people come to be auto-enrolled, they've had 18 years of potentially no savings whatsoever. How do you convince somebody that for 18 years hasn't ever really had to care about saving, because a large portion of that is being provided for them by their parents? If they've not been in a position to be able to save for their children or educate their children in a way that the children need to be to understand money. How do you, at 18, how do you say to somebody, you need to start saving for your future, when realistically all they want to do is go to university, spend money and have a good time? But the earlier that you start, like we've talked about, compounding, the earlier that you start, the easier it's going to be for you as you go through. It's people like me, hello, that didn't really start very early, that now do need to kind of sacrifice more in order to have the future that I want to have. And I am in a lucky position that I have been able to do that. I wouldn't like to be in a position where I'm thinking now, what am I going to do? Like we're talking about the state pension. It's in the press, by the way. We'll be raiding your pension pots to pay for the trillions of debt that we're now in because of COVID. I would be sitting thinking, what am I going to have? Like, where will I live? What will I do when I reach retirement? Am I going to have to sell my house to accommodate my pension or my lifestyle? It's just mind-blowing when you think, really, we talk quite easy about it, but I think it's hard to get somebody into the frame of mind without them actually having the education and the goal of this is what you need. Like, you can't depend on other people because credit is everywhere. Like, everywhere you look, retailer sites that you go on now, the first payment option isn't put your card details in. The first payment option is, do you want to split these payments over days, weeks or months? That to me is bizarre. If you can't afford something, don't buy it. Just don't buy it. It's not on other people to provide your retail experience. I'm quite passionate about this. I don't like credit.
It's a regular bugbear of all of ours at True Potential, which is it's easier to get into debt than it is to actually save. Huh? When we look at the hoops we've got to jump through to satisfy regulation just to help somebody do an impulse save or get somebody to choose a new portfolio, etc. That's a lot harder than going onto a clothing website and then splitting the payment 3 ways with Klarna, for instance, which you can do click, 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 and you're done from there. But that's, we could spend hours talking about that. So we'll not today. Maybe that's a future podcast.
Am I going to be invited to that podcast, or am I going to be left?
We're back in the studio, then we can get you a soapbox and you can stand on that, Diane.
It'll still look like I'm just sat down though, darling, given that I'm tiny.
If you need to sell your house, Diane, I've got a spare bedroom, so you're welcome to stop here to pay for your retirement.
Thanks very much, Jamie. I'll let Annie know. I'll give her a ring after this and tell her I'll be moving in.
Always here for you.
Diane doesn't need you. She's got a very generous employer who pays her a great wage, Jamie.
True that.
Loads of money from there. Look, I think we'll begin to wrap things up, Diane and gentlemen, from there. But I think maybe just I'll play hot potato with each of you here and just ask, would it be possible, just off the top of your head, for you to save 5% more of what you already save? And how would you do that? And I'll start with you, Jeff, on that.
Yeah, I think it would be possible. Clearly, you'd need to sit down and plan it out, but it's possible for all of us to make change. And even you don't do it on a frequent basis. You may want to do something where you can achieve that 5% over an annual basis. So for this week, where we're all at home, I'm not driving to the office. That'll save me quite a bit of money on petrol, so I can drop that into my savings as a one-off. There's a way to help you at least move in that direction. So there's many ways I think that we can all look into saving more, and it's just what is right for you as the individual. You might want to do it ad hoc. You might want to up your direct debit by just a couple of percent. Doesn't look as bad as a 5% hit, but over time it'll be a positive. So I think I could take a look at it and think about, well, where can we save a bit more and achieve that.
The ad hoc bit's a really good one, Jeff. You're right. At times there are certain weeks or months where we spend a lot less. So rather than, as you say there, because it can frighten people sometimes when you say just save 5, 10, 15% of your income every month and they see it come out, versus you can probably flatten that out a bit or level it out at least with some of these ad hoc payments. That's a great point, Jeff. Jamie?
You know, I pay slightly more percentage-wise in, and I did it right at the very start. So it basically meant that my wages, I kind of didn't get used to that level of spending because I knew it was already coming out. I think that's what I quite like about putting into my pension. But I kind of agree with Jeff that I look at if I get, like, say, a bonus at the end of the period, I use my salary to live off, and I'll use my bonus to save off. And that works quite nicely for me. And I also occasionally, when I'm drunk, impulse save. So
not impulse buys.
So my thoughts are, I'll get more beer, get drunk, and then that'll make life easier.
Don't forget your cash back on the beer, Jamie.
Yeah.
Cash back on the beer, impulse save that as well.
Well, I nearly oversubscribed to the ISA because of that.
Oh dear.
It's Friday night and it's staff webinar, and it was payday yesterday, Jamie. So the stars are aligned for you to make a silly impulse save tonight.
A hat trick.
It's dangerous. What I would say, I quite agree with Jeff, is that we've got obviously nursery fees just around the corner, which I nearly fell off my seat when I seen how much they were going to cost.
Right.
So you do have points in your life where you can't save, and I kind of get that. And it's all about having that fine balance of going, well, yeah, there will be certain points, and I know some people, I've got friends that live to the end of the month. It's about trying to balance it is about having a fair balance in your life. And I think it's important that people are aware that you shouldn't be saving as much as you can to have a great retirement and then not be able to live now. So I would definitely say that's a point worth making.
Yeah, and on that note, we've got Miss Patterson, who's got a Friday afternoon off today to go gallivanting in Newcastle. So how are you going to save money this month, Diane?
So I was just based on what Jamie said there and your initial question, Dan, the 5%, it would be, and I don't want to sound smug, but I am very comfortable, and it would be very easy for me to save an extra 5% because there's absolutely, and this is what I was getting at earlier on, as your life matures with you, there's absolutely nothing I need now. So I've got a home, I've got a car, I don't have debt. So for me to be able to save 5% more, it would be very easy. And in some ways I do, because I think we've spoken about this before. I leave what I want to spend a month in my bank account. I've got direct debit set up. I've got the pension contribution. I've got everything going in that I want. Then anything else that I don't want to spend, I've got a savings account that I had when I was 16, and a Saturday job was my first bank account. That's actually tied to my current account. So every month on payday, I just move everything in other than what I want to spend. And that mounts up very quickly. So once I've got over and above a certain amount, I impulse save that, which again, pound cost averaging doesn't do me any favours. But it's just my way of knowing that should something happen, boiler breaks down, car needs repairs, need new tyres, whatever it might be, that I've got that there, and anything that I don't need, I can save towards the goals. So in all honesty, yes, I could save it very easy, and I wouldn't feel impacted. But it might just mean that I'd have to drink a half a cider this afternoon instead of fancy cocktails. So I can always slide it back should I need to.
Is that the objective this afternoon then, Diane? Ciders, not cocktails.
Well, we'll see how. The more ciders that I have, though, Dan, the less the saving becomes necessary.
Not if you're Jamie. The more ciders you have, the more you save. So
true.
I think you should. Out of interest for Newcastle, have you had to book a route around? Or
yeah.
You have?
Yeah, we've had no choice. So I was just telling Jeff before we came on, we're actually going with two friends. It's their afternoon and they invited us. I was saying you feel a little bit rude saying, I know you've booked these places, but can I change your route? Because they're going to all over everywhere. So you can imagine you've got to plan in walking distance. You have to plan your time. So I need 15 minutes between here to get to there, and then to possibly wait in a queue. But because you can have an hour and a half to 2 hours at a table now, we tend to just book the maximum amount that we can have instead of what Newcastle is traditionally known for, which is just bar hopping. We've literally got 3 places booked and then food. So it's probably going to be more of a comfortable afternoon than a Oh, I say that now. I'm just going to end up dancing on a table somewhere at 7 o'clock. So who knows? I'll wear my mask though. Don't panic, people. I'm double jabbed and I'll wear the mask.
Not allowed to dance on tables at the moment, Diane. I'm afraid it spreads it. It's
Again,
fine. If sitting at a table's fine, but if you stand up on that table,
But Dan, coming back to the fact that I'm tiny, nobody would know I was actually on the table. So.
And Jeff or Jamie, so we know what Diane's up to, because then she'll be hungover the rest of the weekend. So for yourselves, any plans?
Well, we haven't mentioned, Jeff won't be watching this, but we haven't mentioned that there's an important game on Saturday night.
Is that Denmark against the Czech Republic, Jamie?
Denmark against the Czech Republic, because as you can see, I've got that Danish in us. But no,
bacon though, Jamie.
I will be watching I meet a friend on Saturday, but I'm trying on for my brother's wedding on Saturday morning, which is interesting. But yeah, then I'll be watching the England game and hoping we get through.
With your John, you'll be able to go to like a little boy's tailors as well, Jamie, to get a suit from.
Exactly. We had to go to Debenhams. It's not even there anymore, so I can't even say that. Push the junior section for John.
That's right. And apologies, John. I don't know why I've even said that. It's not kind, but it's out there now. It's public.
He'll get you back, Dan. We will. So no apology necessary.
He'll not. I do it during when we do staff meetings as well. I tend to, for some reason, I hone in on either Jamie or John. I just look at them and I say whatever pops in my head. I think it's a form of Tourette's to bully the Sextons, and I don't even know why, because they're both good friends and colleagues who I've had for years. So apologies to the Sexton family. Jeff?
I think, like Jamie, I'll be watching the football, and we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping that England can make it through.
Yes, I know. Well, if they don't, we'll hear. We've got a number of Scottish colleagues, and they're very, very quiet this week. So I think we'll probably be hearing Billy Jack and George Peebles playing the Ukrainian anthem at any stage right now. And if we get beat, all that happens is you get an email on Sunday morning off George, to say, have emails gone down because it's very quiet. We'll have to wait and see with that. Well, look, Diane, have a great afternoon today. Jamie and Jeff, enjoy the weekend as well. Thank you very much for your time today. And ladies and gentlemen as well, thank you very much for today. I hope you found it useful. If you get the chance, please press like on this video. If you want to hear more, please also press the subscribe option so you get a ping every time. A ping being a nice notification, not a ping saying self-isolate for 10 days like another app does at the moment. So have a lovely weekend, everybody. Good luck to England, or good luck to the Ukraine if you're Welsh, Irish, Scottish from there. And we'll speak to you next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye.